special web show is unashamedly about making money and creating wealth, but not through any crackpot scheme, but through proven methods. My guest introduces himself on his website as investor, best-selling author, business mentor, thought provoker, and I love this one, global citizen. His is a story set to inspire any aspiring entrepreneur. So let's get on with it. Welcome, Jeremy Harbour.
Hi, welcome. Thank you, Malcolm.
This Jeremy Harbour BV-TV web show is in 3 parts. In part 2, called The Harbour Club, is where Jeremy will talk about how he helps you see success. And in part 3, how his Unity organization helps you point you in the right direction. But it's part 1 that will start your journey of inspiration as you listen to his insider story of passion and commitment. So, Jeremy, it's all yours. Tell us the inside story.
Yeah, well, I guess any story starts at the beginning. So, when I was a little 7-year-old kid, I remember taking all the flowers out of my parents' garden, sticking them in jam jars, and sitting outside trying to sell them to passers-by, and was on a sort of entrepreneurial journey ever since then. I actually started my first proper business when I was 14. I was selling watches and jewelry on a market stall at the weekend, and I progressed to wholesaling watches and jewelry to other market traders because I realized I could get better discounts buying in bigger bulk. And I actually left school when I was 15 to pursue that business. So I didn't do the kind of full education thing, which was, my parents were both the first in their families to get degrees. So then I immediately spoilt the patch by not following through with that. I guess like most people, you kind of look around you, and your version of success is this idea that you start a business and you work really, really hard. And so that's very much what I threw myself into at a very young age. And I had varying degrees of success. I mean, all the startups that I started, eventually fell over, but I made some money along the way. And then when I was 19, I started a telecommunications company. Mobile phones were kind of taking off, and they just got, evolved from the size of a house brick to something you could possibly keep in your pocket, although you wouldn't nowadays. And so I started a mobile phone business, supplying mobile phones to small to medium-sized businesses, because like so often small to medium-sized businesses are left out in the big picture. Everybody caters for corporates and for retail, but small business, which is a huge market segment. I mean, it's half of economic output in the UK, for example. Tends to get ignored by people. So I started a business focusing on that area. And what was really fascinating is telecoms is very acquisitive. So as soon as you get a bit of scale, around $1 million of annual revenue, everyone's trying to buy you, because everyone would like to add that $1 million of revenue to their business without having to go out and, that hard slog of winning all of those customers. So I had loads of meetings with people that were trying to buy my company. And I guess that was my sort of first education in M&A, was being on the other side of the table, being effectively pitched, because that's what they were doing, pitching me to buy my business. And I think after I'd had probably, more than a dozen of those kind of meetings, I figured that I should be the buyer instead of the seller. So instead of selling to one of these guys, I should do the buying. And I think most people, as soon as they hear buying business, they think, well, you've got to have pots of money, or you've got to be able to borrow money from the bank or whatever. But what I learned from these people is that there are some quite clever deal structures you can present that actually don't use any or much of your own cash in the on the day of closing. And so I basically used those tactics on other small telecoms companies, and I kissed my fair share of frogs before I found my princess. But eventually I found a 13-year-old mobile phone shop not too far away from where I was. They had 1,000 active customers, which was about what we were adding in a typical year. So we were doing 80, 90 a month, which is about 1,000 a year. And I was able to structure a deal to buy that company without using any cash up front and without borrowing money from the bank. And basically, when we closed that deal, it added a year's worth of sales to my business in an afternoon. And I hadn't taken any risk. I hadn't spent money on salespeople. I hadn't invested in marketing or advertising or anything like that. We'd just grown by a year's worth of sales in an afternoon without putting any capital down on day one. And it was like an epiphany. In fact, even thinking about it now, the hairs on the back of my neck stand up a little bit, because it was such a game-changing idea that you didn't have to run the marathon. You could just run the last 10 yards and they still give you a medal. It was kind of like I found a shortcut to all the traditional blood, sweat, and years that you would have to put into growing a business. So from then on,
just a minute, Jeremy, because this is so intriguing, and I just want to make, I'm sure viewers have got a few questions there. And so you did that without giving away any equity in your own business?
Correct, yeah. I mean, literally with this particular company, I mean, this was quite a small business, but this particular company was looking to close its doors and finish. It was a very motivated seller. And effectively, we just agreed to pay them a deferred consideration over time, and some consideration linked to switching their customers over to us. So effectively, there was no cash up front. We just paid for it over the next 6 to 9 months. So it was a very simple transaction, but a complete game changer in the way that I thought. Now, since then we've evolved loads of different ways that you can do this and buy companies without using cash, but in more sophisticated ways. But that first one I think was great because it just proved a concept to me. And what was interesting was it was like putting on a whole new pair of spectacles. I mean, for example, I'd read all these entrepreneur books about how you start a business and work really hard. Now I'd done a deal, I started looking at everything through the lens of doing deals. And sure enough, you read Richard Branson's book again, and you realize he was basically bankrupt until he did a deal. He sold Virgin Music to EMI Music. And then, you read, any of the Dragon's Den type characters, and nearly all of them, Theopathetus bought Licenza for £1 and sold it for 100 million. That was his game-changing moment. Whoever did Bannatyne sold the nursing home company and generated the cash to invest in the gym business. And Peter Jones sold Generation Telecom to Vodafone. So, all of these people who before you looked through this lens of start a business and work really hard, didn't actually create their wealth starting businesses and working really hard. They created their wealth doing a deal of some sort, whether it be a buy or sell or go public type transaction. And so it was like putting on this new pair of spectacles and seeing the world in a different way. And what was fascinating was how many deals then pop up in everyday life. When you buy a red car, you see red cars everywhere. That the reticular activating thing. It works with deals too. Once you start really looking for opportunities, they're everywhere. All the conversations you're having. I think people, when they have a conversation with somebody else, are so obsessed with what they're going to say next, pitching their product or selling the thing that they're selling, that they're not listening to all these signals that are coming back at them, all these signposts that pop up, and to give you a real case in point, after I closed that first deal, which was to add a telecoms company, 2 weeks later, I closed my second one, and I hadn't even, met or heard of that second one at that point. It was just when I met somebody, I suddenly saw the opportunity, and I bought a small IT company in very much the same way. And basically over 18 months, I ended up acquiring 11 companies. So I ended up with a group of 12 companies. We were doing, we went from a million revenue telco to doing 13.5 million in revenue. Wow. And having 135 staff. So we literally, it was like a sort of a rocket ship. Now, you might think, 12 businesses, 13.5 million sounds very glamorous. The only thing worse than having one crappy business is having 12 crappy businesses. Dealing with 135 staff is just 135 more problems that you have to deal with. I mean, it looks very glamorous on the outside because obviously my income went up, and you spend your income. So I'm driving a flashy car, I live in a nice house, I'm going to lovely holidays, but you don't really create any wealth. You just grow into your income. So I think from the outside, it probably looked like I was a rock star, with all these staff and the Porsche and the houses and all this kind of stuff. But it was horribly stressful. I mean, literally bumping from payroll to payroll when it came to cash flow management and all of those kind of things. And so my next big epiphany, my next big lesson was when I sold one of the companies. And in fact, what happened was one company went bust and one company I sold at almost the same time. And the company that went bust was the one I decided to keep. So I decided I would sell one and keep one of the 12, the two biggest ones basically. And the one that I decided to keep, I decided to keep it because it had a 3-year contract with the world's largest insurance company, and it was spitting off lots of cash. And I thought, well, that's the keeper, that's my cash cow. And this one here, I'm going to sell because it hasn't grown much in the last year, and I should sell it. The world's largest insurance company was AIG, and they famously went bust in 2008, and problems were there way before that, in sort of 2007. And so that business failed because we had such exposure to this one big customer. And then the one that I sold, this is where we had this kind of dual epiphany. And the dual epiphany was, the first part is the right time to sell your business is now, because you don't know what's around the corner. You could have a pandemic for all you know, or a global financial crisis, or Google could start to do what you do for free. So there are all these things that can just crop up. So, I believe the right time to sell a business is now. The reason I didn't sell that company is because it had a 3-year contract with the world's largest insurance company. And the reason I should have sold that company is because it had a 3-year contract with the world's largest insurance company.
Good lesson.
With that one. The next lesson was, you don't make money running businesses, you make money when you sell them. And it was the capital event that was just an absolute game changer, because when you're generating income, you can save a bit of your income, so you could put 10% aside or 15% aside or 20% aside and start to build up some savings. But you get a spreadsheet and you work out what you want out of life, and you work out how long it will take to get there by saving. And I bet you it's more than 150 years. It's just I've never seen it. And I've read the Forbes list, and I've read the Sunday Times Rich list. No one in there is in there from saving.
Right.
I genuinely don't think it's a viable route to wealth. However, when you sell an asset that you've created through this, your own sweat, you create a capital event, and that lump sum, that capital that you get, has a game-changing nature to it, which I hadn't fully appreciated. And that is that you can put that capital to work, and that capital will generate genuine passive income. And I don't mean the kind of get rich quick type passive income. It's one of those terms that's been a bit hijacked by people trying to sell you crap. But the genuine passive income that comes from capital properly deployed, in a diversified portfolio that's generating an income stream. And that income stream comes in rain or shine, whether you're awake or asleep, it comes in every month. Now, if you can make that income stream the income that you live off, then the income that you were previously spending all of on your lavish lifestyle, you can actually invest 100% of your income. Now, when you invest 100% of your income, it starts to get interesting, because you can genuinely snowball your wealth up to something significant. But that's only going to happen when you unencumber your income from your daily life. And I believe you can only do that from a capital event. And I think the only way you can have a capital event short of inheritance or selling the family jewels or whatever it is to create a business and sell a business, or to buy a business and sell a business.
Fascinating. And did that lead on to you writing the book about, how to buy a business without any cash?
Yeah. So, look, very early on in my career, I was involved, not that early on. In 2012, I was invited by Capstone to write a story about startups. And actually, I explained to them at the time that I don't really do startups. I buy and sell businesses. And they said, yeah, but your journey is so fascinating. We want you to write your story. So I wrote this book called Go Do. It was published by Capstone in 2012, and it was all about how to start a business. But I still had stuck in me the real book, which would be called Go Do Deals, which is how you create tons of shareholder value doing acquisitions. So either growing a business by acquisition or buying and selling companies. And that can be done, doing distressed deals or doing roll-ups, which is where you put several businesses together in the same sector and then selling the group, or it can be done through go public type transactions where you list a company and then acquire lots of other businesses under that. And I basically wanted to take people through that sort of idea. So I wrote the book Go Do Deals. I actually wrote it about 3 years ago now, and my marketing team in the Harbour Club told me not to publish it because it has so many things that we share with our Harbour Club delegates that they felt that it wasn't the right time to publish it. So we deferred the publishing until December 2020. And of course, time flies, and here we are almost in December 2020. So yeah, it's about to come out. So and I love we've got the book's called Go Do Deals, and we've got the web address godo.deals.
Wow.
So actually, people can go type into their browser godo.deals, and that's the book's kind of website.
And you can of course reach those details by using the URL that's behind me. Now, I could spend hours listening to you about that, because and a host of questions bumbling. We'll maybe meet again on that one, because it's time to move to part 2, Jeremy. It's making it all work for people that now counts. And I love those 2 simple word approach, go do. Dead simple, isn't it? Go do. Yeah. So how does the Harbour Club help us go do?
Yeah, so look, when you start out in business, I've often joked that that's the time I felt I knew the most, because you always think you know everything when you start, and then life is a great teacher, isn't it? You learn, you suddenly realise how little you know, and the challenge is, I think, when people have gone through entrepreneurship and they've realised how hard it is in reality, that it's not as easy as perhaps they thought when they started. The thought of embarking on something completely new, like buying a business, can often feel like a mountain that they just don't fancy climbing. It's such a big thing to overcome. And so a lot of people just never ever delve into this world that I've kind of found myself in. And what I found was back in sort of 2006, 2007, I kept getting offers from people to come and work for them, or to be a consultant, or to be a non-executive director, to help them go and acquire companies, and particularly go and acquire companies no money down. I had quite a habit of buying people's biggest competitors for nothing, and then they would get very upset that they didn't get that same opportunity, and so they would then approach me and say, "Can you help us do the same thing?" And I could never think of a reason why on earth I would want to do that. Why would I want a salary to help somebody find a deal? If I found the deal, I would just do the deal myself, and that's what I was doing on a regular basis. And so I couldn't understand why I would do that as a job. And then I actually bought a seminar business. So it was doing about £3.5 million a year in revenue. It was a very well-known sort of seminar company or seminar operator. I bought a controlling stake of 60% for £1, and I watched their business model, and their business model was very much around selling these seminar programs, educational programs for business owners to take them through, whether it be learning all about Facebook ads, or learning all about how they can do different things in different ways in their business. And I suddenly thought this might be the solution to all these people that want me to do consulting. Instead of doing consulting, I can just offer them a training program where I teach them everything I've learned over my deals that I've done, give them some case studies of how to put deals together and things like that. So back in 2009, we did the very first ever Harbour Club, and the Harbour Club was basically designed to be a 3-day training program plus a community after that, where people could share ideas and share best practice and learn together and collaborate together. And I was really sick with the kind of the traditional seminar industry, because the traditional seminar industry was all about selling you the next seminar. Because what happens is, no matter how much people learn, they never feel like they're quite ready to take action. And I think these other seminar companies prey on that fear by selling them the gold, platinum mentoring package, or the something golden, platinum diamond club, or whatever it is, for a load of extra money. And I really wanted to get away from that. And I wanted to focus around go do. I wanted to focus around, you learn from doing, you don't learn from learning. You need to have the knowledge, you need to go through and get all the knowledge, but then there's a point where you have to take action, or you're just never going to learn this stuff. And the slightly crude analogy I often use is around breaking your virginity. So I talk about breaking your virginity. Yeah, and in much the same way, you can read a lot of books about it, but it doesn't prepare you for the real thing. So, and some have read more than others. But the concept is very similar. That there has to come a point where you're going to learn from actually doing and participating in it. So what we do with the Harbour Club is we teach everybody everything they need to do over a 3-day course, and then they go into a community. We have an app, we have loads of shared best practice, there's lots of bonus videos that people are posting all the time on things that they've learned, and we drag people through the process of doing their first deal within the community. And it's a one-off charge, so there's no upsells, there's no additional things that people have to buy. Once they're a member, and they get all of those benefits. And it was really started. Honestly, it was started as a way of making money from those people that I was telling to go away. And that was the entire purpose I did it in the beginning. But since then, it's just taken on a life of its own, and I'm incredibly proud of it. And it's far more than that now. It's a genuine global community of kind of movers and shakers who are doing tons and tons of incredible deals. And also it works really well for me because my core business is taking companies public and then using those public companies for acquisitions. And of course, through the Harbour Club community, if I'm looking for, I don't know, dentists in Norway, I can just reach into the app on my phone and type in, hey, I'm looking for dentists in Norway that do more than 2 million a year in revenue. And the community will just throw all of these inquiries at me. So I get fantastic deal flow from the community, but it's kind of like an accidental, side effect that, here more than 10 years on, we've created this, this fantastic community. So it works really well for everybody. I benefit from it, they benefit from it, and we're sharing this great idea with people.
Brilliant. And of course, you can find details into the Harbour Club by the URL behind me. And I suppose there's a lot of my viewers will be reflecting upon that virginity question. But it's time to move to part 3. Okay, I'm all fired up now, Jeremy. Where do I start? What can I plug into that will help me? For example, how does the Unity Club work?
Yeah, so Unity Group is my private equity company based out of Singapore, and it's kind of my day job. So I think unlike a lot of the people who are selling courses on things, I actually do what my course is about. So Unity Group is a private equity company that takes companies public and buys companies. At the time of recording this, I've done 4 deals in the last 4 weeks. So we're very, very active as a deal-making organization, and our focus is on very well established. So the average age of a company that we've acquired in the last 12 months is 23 years. So 23 is the average age. So we've had ones that are much older than that. So they tend to be well-established businesses. They tend to be profitable, debt-free, and well-run. So very high caliber management. One of the deals we did recently, the owners just won the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. Many of them are published authors or leaders in their field when they come to us. So they typically tend to be generating more than $1 million a year in annual profit. So they're very profitable businesses, but they're still what would be classed as small to medium-sized businesses. And basically, this whole business came about. I mean, Unity Group was founded in 1997, so it predates, Harbour Club and everything else. This has been my core business for all of that time. And the current kind of thing came about because the small to medium-sized business world, just like it was in that mobile phone business I had, is horribly neglected. So it's neglected by private equity. Private equity only kicks in when businesses are much, much bigger. It's neglected by venture capital, who really just want the latest, sexiest, techiest thing that they can find. A blockchain marijuana app or something would be for them. And then banks. Banks don't give a shit about a small business. They, unless you want to bet your house, they won't give you any money. So it really is a terrible landscape for small business. But if you look at the economy, 50% of GDP comes from small businesses, and that's in every mature economy, whether you're in the US, Canada, UK, Europe, Australia, Singapore, any mature economy, 50% of GDP comes from small business. And over 90% of the private sector workforce are in small businesses as well. So it's kind of where everybody works, and it's where, half the economy is coming from. And in fact, it's small businesses that tend to create jobs. So when you see big spikes in employment, it tends to be because there's a very vibrant and active small business community, because a small business going from 5 to 15 employees is much easier than, a big business going from 20,000 to 50,000. It rarely happens. In fact, big businesses are very good at finding efficiencies to get rid of people, whereas small businesses have a demand to add people for growth. And so, we looked at this and we realized that the small business community is completely neglected, and there should be more opportunities for them. And so the other thing that we realized is that there's an awful lot of money in the world. I mean, they keep making more of it. But all of that money flows into this parallel economy, which is the derivatives market. And so, you know, money pours into stocks, bonds, derivatives, which are bets on things. And basically none of it finds its way into small business. In fact, if you look at the largest asset managers in the world, so the top 500 asset managers globally, they control $93 trillion of capital. So they've got collectively invested $93 trillion. To put that in perspective, the UK's total GDP is about $2 trillion. So 93 trillion is invested by the top 500 asset managers, and there are tens of thousands of asset managers. That's just the top 500. And if you look at how they're diversified, and by the way, they pride themselves on their diversification. I mean, they have whole conferences where all they talk about is diversification, and they're invested in stocks, bonds, real estate, derivative products, gold, silver, Bitcoin, for Christ's sake. You know, they're in every asset class you can possibly think of, apart from small business. They have zero, apart from a little bit of venture capital, which is the kind of Silicon Valley crazy money startup stuff. The top 500 asset managers have zero exposure to small to medium-sized businesses, and small to medium-sized businesses are half the economy. How is it that organizations that pride themselves on diversification have zero exposure to the largest part of the economy? And so I felt if we could fix that, if we could solve that, we would have a punt at effectively democratizing wealth. Because if we could unlock that capital and get it into real communities that really employ people and really do stuff, you know, these are the businesses in every community that are actually, you know, fixing the elevator or, cleaning the public toilets or laying the road down, all of these real jobs, fixing your air conditioning, all of those kind of things are being done by these businesses. So basically, we just took it apart and said, okay, why is it that all the capital flows in this direction and not in this direction? And it came down to three core reasons. First one is small businesses are too risky. They go bust all the time. Second one is they lack scale. Now, scale affects them in two ways. The first one is big business, big capital wants to deploy large amounts of money. You can't put a large amount of money into a small business. You can't give a small business $100 million. So you might have to give 100 businesses $1 million. Well, to do that, you might have to do due diligence on 1,000 businesses to find 100 that you can put $1 million each into. Or you can buy $100 million credit default swap from Goldman Sachs in an instant. And if you thought it was a bad idea in the afternoon, you can sell it again. So how do you compete with those kind of things? The other area that scale affects small business is that quite often you have to be big to get big. You can't win contracts. You can't win the contracts you need until you're already big. So it creates a bit of a glass ceiling for businesses. And then the final thing that puts them off is liquidity. If you invest in a small business, your money is stuck there for a really long time. If you invest in derivatives or stocks or bonds, there's a ready market to sell those stocks or bonds or derivatives. So you can invest and divest. You know, the president of the US says something funny on Twitter in the morning, you can sell all your stuff in the afternoon, you've got this opportunity to invest and divest as the macroeconomic story around you evolves. Whereas if you're investing in a small business, you might have to wait 10, 15 years to get your liquidity moment when that entrepreneur dies or sells the business. So we figured if we could fix those three issues, if we could address the problems of risk, scale, and liquidity, we could attract global capital into small businesses. So we created, I've done loads of roll-ups in my career where I put several businesses together, and I've learned a lot of lessons about how you don't do it. And one of the biggest mistakes people make is they focus on the synergies. So they go, okay, I can put these two companies together. We get rid of the back office. We, centralize all these functions, and now it's going to make, 2 + 2 = 6, and all this kind of stuff. And in my experience, in small to medium-sized businesses, that doesn't work. What happens in a small to medium-sized business is most of the value is in the culture that's been created with the staff and the customers. You could call it the brand. And, so that brand, I mean, it's not a well-known brand, but that brand that they have, that culture that they have is really where the value is sitting. And when you stick two of them together and you get rid of half the back office, you'll find that instead of focusing on what they should be focusing on, they're focusing on all the changes that you're trying to make. Deliberately sabotage the business because you got rid of Deirdre, the bookkeeper, or whatever it is. So what we realized is that traditional roll-ups don't work very well in small to medium-sized businesses. And also traditional roll-ups are often fueled with lots of debt. So they borrow tons of money and they use that to acquire these companies. And, you know, often it creates a house of cards that can fall over later, or puts too much strain on the businesses to be able to survive pandemics and things like that. So what we decided was that the only way to do it is to have all of the founders of those businesses vested. They have to be part of the journey. And so we created a governance structure that we call Agglomeration. And this governance structure allows multiple small to medium-sized businesses to collectively own a fully reporting public company. And so we listed one of these 18 months ago at the time of recording. It was called MBH Corporation PLC. The stock ticker is M8H. Since we listed it 18 months ago, it's done 18 acquisitions, actually, averaging one a month. It's over 100 million in revenue now, over 10 million a year in annual profits. In 2019, it was the third, according to the Financial Times, it was the third fastest growing small cap company in the whole of Europe. And it will continue to add more businesses into that group. And that is an agglomeration. People can have a little Google and a look at it. And that's what my day job is. That's what Unity Group does for entrepreneurs. We help successful entrepreneurs go public through agglomeration and and democratize wealth in the process.
Jeremy, it's been more than stimulating meeting you, but you're not finished yet. There may be a lot of people who at the moment are having a lot of self-doubt about achieving what you propose. So just before you leave, please give those self-doubters a final 3 pieces of go-do advice.
Yeah, look, I think the first thing would be to start on this journey a little bit, start to do some research and learn about these topics that I'm talking about, because for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's the first time they've ever thought about this. You know, most people just pigeonhole and say, I can't go and buy a business. I can't do any of that kind of stuff. So I would just question, could you see the value in growing your business by acquisition, or could you see the value in buying a business versus starting a business? And if you could see that value, then just start with some research. You know, we publish tons of free content on YouTube, on Instagram. You can go to jeremyharbour.com and get loads of free info there, and just start on that journey and just see if it's something that appeals to you and resonates with you. I guess see if you can, see if it's an area that you think would help you.
In this extra special BV-TV web show, I've been talking to Jeremy Harbour. Jeremy, thanks for bringing everyone so much brilliant advice.
No, thank you very much for having me. It was good fun to talk about my favorite topic.